G'day campers, and how are you? And welcome to another Thursday Night Live. Tonight I've got with me Lisa Jayne, founder of Bungie, and I've got Omji, a Kundalini transcript expert, who's also a radiologist. And I've got Serg Vera joining us shortly. Just had a quick call to say that he's running a bit late, but he's coming on board, which I can't wait for. So I can't wait to introduce Serg to our community. Before we say hello to our guests tonight, I want to really thank Lisa for opening up the conversation that we're going to have tonight, loving someone in addiction. So Lisa contacted me the other week, and we had a bit of a chat about whether or not it would be good to actually have this conversation. I'm very grateful that we have, which has actually led to this now. So I'm going to open tonight's session with, what is addiction? The Cambridge Dictionary describes it as an inability to stop doing or using something, especially something harmful, which I think is very apt, because addiction comes in many, many forms. Most drugs come sex, sugar. We've all got our vices, and we've all got things that we're addicted to. So we're looking forward to getting into this, because we're going to head down the harder road of opportunities that people have really heard as per our conversation. So without further ado, welcome, Lisa, and thank you for opening up this subject.
You're welcome, Scott. I think it's a very worthwhile conversation to have. And I would really love to see that we could just treat it like, hey, we're human beings and this is what some people do, and let's just get our skills and our resources in, like, rather than sort of, separation all the time. And I think it's good. I was actually thinking before we started to talk how I really believe it's a conversation that we should start to normalize, because, it is so prevalent in our society, and we all have stuff, That was a big, deep conversation. At the land, that we all have stuff. How deep was that?
Look, as happened the other day, we started off and look, we're getting to know each other. We're going to share the story, and then we'll go from there. So, Omji, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us. You happened to watch the video that Lisa and I put out. We'll start with your take on that video. That's all right. Actually, before we do that, because not a lot of people know you, introduce yourself.
My name's Omji. I live down under in Tasmania. I'm passionate about how a human being experiences the divine. So I look into the science of yoga for my answers, because underneath it, I'm a scientist. And in that, I also try and understand how we're unified psychologically and behaviorally. So I'm a little bit of a psychotic and a psychologist all in one, because I've been researching myself for about 20 years, maybe a bit longer. So there you go. That's me. Where am I? I've got this passion that's led me through the human being and the body and the mind to this yoga, the science of yoga, like I said, and underlying the science of yoga is something called the Sanskrit alphabet. So now my addiction is the alphabet that yoga comes from, and the alphabet that resonates in the core of the human framework, and it's termed Sanskrit. That's about me. And I'm a radiographer, not a radiologist, so I only take x-rays. I'm not a doctor. But that's okay. So if you want me to give you a spiel on the video, I thought it was really heartfelt and open. And I really like Lisa's perspective on the non-judgmental allowance of people in their behavioural expressions, and then bringing the responsibility back to the individual who's making the judgment of those behavioral expressions, and then being able to love that person or bring the judgment into your heart to see what your heart says, and then be able to make love to the moment and allow them to be in the moment without your superimposition.
Awesome.
Over and out. Or not out, but
No,
there you go. There's my summary.
Well, that's just the beginning, you know, like it's fantastic, because the conversation that we had, Lisa, was just awesome. And loving someone in addiction is something that is difficult. And it's something that you're currently experiencing with somebody. Would you like to share that with us, Lisa?
Actually, I've had 3 relationships with addicts. Like, hey, like I'm an expert at this. My first husband I was with for 18 years is still a practicing alcoholic. And I had a very codependent relationship with him. So for 18 years, I continued to try and fix him and thought the whole problem was the drink that was in his hand. And like I was just as dysfunctional as what he was in that relationship, but I didn't know that the foundations of our relationship was based on an unhealthy dynamic of what I call victim, persecutor, rescuer. So I got a payoff from actually rescuing him and, you know, him needing me. So that was sort of how my first relationship worked. My second relationship, I ended up with a man who was incredibly intuitive and a recovered alcoholic. So it wasn't a codependent relationship. It was one where I found incredible freedom in myself and was confronted every day with my own behaviors, which really made me look this way instead of that way, which was great for me. Oh, difficult, but great. And one of the things I found in that relationship that was very hard is that we had an incredibly honest and fruitful relationship. And yet often with addiction, I've noticed that if one area of addiction has been resolved, sometimes it will come out in another area. So needless to say, we had a really good, healthy, strong relationship. We even wrote a book on, like, this is so funny. We even wrote a book on right relations and putting everything on the table. But there was one thing that wasn't put on the table.
Yeah.
And so, and in the end, not that actually broke up the relationship, but after the relationship broke up, I could see there were areas that were probably even hidden in him that he wasn't aware of. And the addiction had come out in other areas. So, and lately I have this beautiful friend that we have such an incredible connection, and his journey has been one of like 30 years of busting, getting sober, incredibly intelligent, knows exactly all how it happens, how it affects the brain, like could tell you anything because he's been to so many rehabs and detoxes and but for him that's been so, I'm so grateful because he has just let me into see everything. And for someone that isn't, I mean, when I say I'm not an addict, I think we all have our little addictions, right? But for someone that hasn't had an addiction to a substance, I have been like, wow, this is like crazy intense. And he's shown me everything. And I've just been like far out. And the one thing he keeps saying to me is, I don't need you to say anything. I don't need you to give me any advice or nothing. He said, just the fact that you're here and you accept me as I am, that is so healing. He said, I can feel the connection. And he said, and that's what's healing me. And it's the heart, it's the love, you know, like it's so cool. And like, so I'm still learning, you know, and it's being given that insight. Quite incredible. And I think for both of us, we've just gone, I don't understand how, like they say, addiction is cunning and baffling and all those things. And I can totally see that. But I can also see that there are areas in my friend that need to be emotional things that need to be addressed. And I think that often it does come back to that really rigorous honesty. And sometimes it's just some things are pretty tough to have to address.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Like for me, it's crazy. Some people can use the same substance and not get addicted. And there seems to be a continuing pattern around whether or not they've got the self-trust and they can work through things. And the people with deeper emotional holdings, they're the ones that seem to take on the addiction a little bit further, because as humans, we move closer towards pleasure than we do pain, and we always move away from pain. So, so I'm just checking that because Serg will be up here shortly, I hope. You're just checking in with this. Sorry, I've been distracted. I'm going to jump for 2 secs. Omji, I'm just going to pop over to you for a sec. Your experience with addiction and loving somebody in addiction, can you share that with us?
I'd say that I've been more the addicted rather than the lover of addicted people.
Yep.
Yeah, but there's a couple of things that, just in regards to what you just said, I'd like to touch base on. I think that there's something going on with really sensitive people.
Absolutely.
In this community, in this culture. I think that addiction resides around, people say it's connection, but I've found for me personally, it's been, most of my addiction's been to fill a void of self-worth. So maybe connection with myself, or maybe that thing, the elusive enoughness, which old mate here, not you, Lisa, but old mate that you're talking to, your mate, when he says, I don't need you to tell me anything and you just be here and not judge me, that's the part that's healing him, because he's feeling like he's enough when he's not getting judged. Yeah, just even if it's for like that night or that moment, whatever it is, because when people are telling you whatever you're doing is wrong, then that's comes into that should and shouldn't stuff to do with like the opposite of what that Marshall Rosenberg talks about in regards to non-violent communication. It's quite a violent type of communication in this culture to do with right and wrong. So that minimizes your enoughness in that. So I've found that me personally, I've been addicted to a substance over a period of time, not now. And then I got addicted to a behavior. And then also because I like to look into things a lot and very deeply, the ancestral patterns or behavioral patterns, like we're all talking about current behavior, but on some level, like if you're objective enough to look back on your life, or for me, for instance, I look back on my life and I've got like baby boomer parents that have a good work ethic, but I'm in a family of 4. My brother's addicted. Both my parents are addicted. If it wasn't, it's cigarettes for a period. My mum's still addicted to cigarettes and gambling. My dad's used to be addicted to a substance. Now he's addicted to sports. My brother's still addicted to substances and behavioral patterns. So for me not to be addicted to something, it's almost impossible. And what you said before, I think everyone's addicted to something. And the more I hang around men's work and men's groups, the more I realise that a few men have replaced their substance abuse with wanting to help people. And that's cool if that's their addiction, but they're still seeking some sort of self-worth or validation that's reflected back at them to provide their self-worth bucket with just the right amount to fill it up through doing a behavior that they see as healthy. So I think everyone's neurotic as anything in this end of days period for humanity. And I think everyone's got addictions. Just hopefully pick one that is culturally acceptable.
It's true. You know what I loved? You mentioned before, Angie, about connection, and then you went on to say connection with self. And these are only my observations, right? So feel free to add to this because I'm learning about this. But what I see is that the connection with self comes when we can actually sit in our heart and when we know ourselves. And the way to that place is by actually going through the pain and the hurt. Like it's almost like the pain and the hurt acts like a barrier for us to get into our heart and keeps us in our head. And I think what I've noticed is that, for example, my friend, he didn't even know how to get into his heart because there was so much pain and trauma and PT, like so much pain. And when I met him, I think just our relationship brought him into his heart, but he hadn't actually experienced that because as soon as he dropped into his heart or started to feel stuff, he would feel vulnerable and the pain was too intense. So I think the addiction comes because we're not capable of actually making the connection with our heart because of the fear and the pain and the trauma. And that's just the way I describe the link. Like I sort of see the link works. And I think our societies keep us in our head. Like we're taught to stay in our head and shut down our feelings. And so especially for a sensitive soul, which most addicts are, how can you survive like that when you're a feeling being and yet your feeling space has been like so suppressed? Of course, you're going to have to replace it with something. Like that just makes total sense to me.
You survive, you don't thrive.
Mm.
And as a masculine embodied person, I don't know if I want to get into like on the threshold of being gender biased and all that sort of, I don't know about anybody and what they're embodying. But from a male perspective, Sergey, you can maybe mute your mic, bro, while you're not talking down the bottom there.
I've got
On the left.
Yeah.
Sweet. I had a brain explosion last week, Lisa, where I reckon that most addictions and wounds that bleed onto people are from unresolved grief, because we don't actually, with my children and with my girlfriend's children, I say to them, hopefully you can learn to express how you feel at any point in time and communicate that in a healthy way. And if you don't, then you can just lock it down as pain and end up as a messed up adult, because I've been one for several years and it's taken me a long time to get past the pain or actually just touch the top of the iceberg and then work through some of that pain to be able to accept myself and know that I'm enough in myself. So I think it's the unresolved grief underneath it all. And then as a man in a culture that's superficially governed by what we call the economy and stimulated mostly through productivity and consumerism and competition, then that doesn't allow much for feelings to occur, especially from a physiological perspective, where your brain's actually designed to spend 2 hours in each hemisphere each at a time, right? And then there's about 90 seconds to 2 minutes where it goes from one side to the other. And my most popular video on my YouTube channel is called The Coffee Scam, because it talks about how every 2 hours, like at work, we wake up, this is only my bullshit theory from the Omdevaji School of Spiritual Neuroses, but we have some sort of stimulus in the morning, and that sort of puts us into our left side of brain so we can be productive for 2 hours. Then we have a morning tea break, and there's a big chance that we have some sort of other stimulant, maybe caffeine-based or sugar-based, throws us into another 2 hour cycle, because it's just at that period when our brain's getting a bit tired and we want to shift into our right side of our intuitive brain and have some creative expression, but we don't. So we have a coffee or Coke and then flip back into productivity. And then at lunchtime, we have some more. And then we have an afternoon tea break. and that'll see us out of our 8-hour day. So it's very hard to come along and go, oh, okay, so we're half creative, sensitive, intuitive beings, but we're fully endorsed and engulfed in this culture that's left side of brain, productive, rational behavior through the working mind. How do we balance that and come back to go, mate, we should work half a day, or forget about the economy, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
physiologically, we do so much that isn't geared towards our human structure, and then we wonder why we're in this end of days period where everyone's in neuroses. That's me for a while. Sergey, how you going, bro? Good to meet you.
No, that's gold. I'm going to introduce Serg, and then we've got questions that come in which I'd like to answer. So, g'day, Serg. Welcome to the Campfire. I'm looking forward to introducing you properly on a one-on-one. Welcome. Share with us a little bit of your knowledge and experience with addiction.
Well, look, firstly, apologies. I've been trying to find a well-lit place. So, yeah, look, I'm Serg. I've been a friend of Scott's for about 20 years. I've battled addictions, as Scott knows. This is the first time I'm actually speaking about it. So,
Beautiful.
yeah, it's a bit daunting, to be quite honest. But look, I had a pretty rough upbringing. Scott's and mine upbringing is very similar. That wasn't the reason what drove me to addiction. My addiction started about 5-6 years ago. Lost everything we owned due to a business venture with a family member. And that pretty much started a bit of a downhill slope for me. I haven't dabbled in too many drugs. I'm not much of a drinker. But when I dabbled, I went pretty hard, more of a cocaine user. I found that sort of took me to, not to a better place, but sort of allowed me to just forget about everything that I was going through at the time. I know it's not an excuse, but at the time it's all, yeah, I'd lost everything. I had nothing left, and I didn't really want to be around. I still suffer from a lot of suicidal thoughts, etc. for now. A lot of things I've been dealing with the last few years. And look, I still dabble in things every now and again. Some people are going to hear this and be a bit shocked. I just find that there's times where it just takes me to a better place, and I just forget about things that are going on at the moment.
I'm so glad you're here tonight, Serg, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's a bit
I want you to see these comments coming through, mate. Because everybody here has got you. And the reason why I've asked you to be on tonight specifically is because the conversation that Lisa and I had was, and it's about loving someone in addiction.
Yep.
And I don't just want to talk about it. I want to show people how to do it.
Yep. I get that. And I appreciate you having me here.
I'd love to say something, Serg, and like I respect you so much because I understand how challenging it is for you to be so open and honest and vulnerable. Like, and here we are, like being recorded. Like, freaking good on you, man. That is courage, right? That is true courage.
The thing is, people are going to see this and are going to be a bit shocked. And that was Scott knew how.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it was really hard for me to be here, but yeah, look, it is what it is. I'm here now. It's in the open, and I guess we deal with things, I guess.
Well,
that's exactly what they're talking about too, Serg. In regards to that's exactly what they're talking about in regards to, like, say, there's a whole lot of do-gooders out there that judge people. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and your fear of judgment. That's what the whole point of this is about. if you watch that YouTube video, they're talking about how can I as a person be accepting and non-judgmental of this person who's going through this terrible time,
Yep.
and they're choosing
Right.
to escape from their pain with some sort of substance or addictive behavior, you know. So it's not so much about you, bro, even though they might be watching it and you got fear of judgment. Everyone's got fear of judgment. Not that I want to
Absolutely.
like generalize, but that's what the whole point of it is, to go, mate, we're all neurotic. We all choose our behaviors. Yeah. And how can the
Absolutely.
people watching this come into their heart and go, fuck, it must be hard on Serge at the moment, you know? And how can
They
we
know
accept him and like fucking reach out a helping hand, like, or just say good on you for turning up to this openness?
Look, I found that being open. I worked out who my true friends were when, not only when I hit rock bottom, but also when I came out and spoke about mental health, about my battles with mental health. Scott's the only one who sort of had my back, really, apart from my wife and so on. I guess a lot of people could have found it a little bit too much for them, or could have opened up a can of worms for them and just gone into things that maybe they just didn't want to deal with it, or
I don't think people know how to, Serge. I actually don't think that people really know how to support someone. A lot of people know how to support someone going through those things. And I don't think, like, even for you and what you went through to be where you are today, if society and if we had been educated and if we understood how to actually navigate our emotional world, we would probably not be sitting here like this right now, because
absolutely,
things happened to you. If we had placed priority on our emotional well-being, if we knew ourselves to be, it's a feeling engagement. Life is a feeling engagement. And yet this is the one thing that we friggin' don't teach people, is how to be in a feeling engagement with life. Like, it is so clearly the missing link.
Oh, absolutely.
And had we learnt that, like, if you had those resources, that all of this would have been avoided. And yet maybe that's why we're sitting here now, because it's like, hey, this is my jam. You can tell I get so passionate about this stuff. Like,
no, look, that's great. I'm glad I'm sort of chatting to someone first that they won't judge me. And that's my fear as well, being judged. And I guess that's a fear of many men, and hence why it takes us so many years to sort of speak out. I didn't speak out till about, I think it was about 3 years ago, I think it was, the first time I spoke out. And being of European descent, we try and carry the world on our shoulders, forgetting about us, and at times it just drives us to do things that, one, we don't want to do, and two, because it's at the expense of your family, and and it's not, it's just like, look, it was just hard to sort of deal with on your own, I guess.
She judged you, bro.
Sorry?
She judged you. She just judged you in a positive way, saying you're brave and courageous and fit for turning
exactly.
up.
No, and that's
So there's some positive things, man. You're allowed to celebrate your victories. Go, yeah, bro, I turned up. I got judged for being awesome.
Yeah, look, that's great, isn't it? It's good that way.
I'm going to jump on.
I think assessment is a good word instead of judgment, because I always see judgment, right? Let's get into semantics here, Omji, right? Judgment separates us from the experience. And so we never get to have the true experience of what's happening right now in this moment with this person.
Yep.
I make a lot of assessments, and I will go, I'm assessing that situation, and I'm not going to put myself in a position to be hurt. So I make assessments, but I don't judge, because when I judge, I actually am not even in the experience that's happening right now.
Yeah, of course.
It's the experience.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Okay. We can look at it as assessment.
Assessments.
As long as it's like the Egyptian after what is it? Anubis, the weighing of the heart after your death, where there's like good and bad behavior, you know what I mean? Like, there's still the scales.
I want to thank Serge deeply from my heart for tonight, because I believe you're a really special man. I think I love you. You know that. And at no time in your life can you ever fail me.
I failed many people, Scott. We've had this conversation, but let's not go into that. Yeah.
No, but I want to talk about it because you haven't. Okay. With anybody that's in pain and they're doing whatever they can to avoid themselves, it's basically because you don't have the tools at the time to deal with the situation. People in general are not bad people. We all make dumb decisions, but we never make a decision based upon the fact that we think we're doing the wrong thing.
That's true.
We always make decisions based upon what we have at the time and what's going to help us get through that. I truly believe in society, if we smile more at each other
So true.
and thank people just for being here and being present and making the effort, everybody has a different summit. Some people it's to go and run a marathon, other people it's just to go out the door. And today, we've gone out the door, and I want to thank you.
Well, the pleasure's all mine, Scott. You know that we've been talking about doing this for a while, and put me on the spot today. I had to juggle a few things and find a well-lit spot. But we made it happen, and look, pleasure's all mine. Believe me.
No.
Believe me.
If it's okay, I'd like to go back for a sec because Andrew's asked a question, and I'd like to discuss it. Lisa, question if I can. How are you able to open yourself up to trusting someone again after being in a relationship with an addict? For me, it's been 20 years, and I still have trust issues.
Andrew, thanks so much for that question. That's a good question. It's very juicy. So the way I grew to really trust other people is I actually came to trust myself. I spent the last 15 years investigating what it was in me that chose to be with an addict, what it was that I was seeking to get from them, how I wanted them to meet my emotional needs. And I realized that I was in a love story. I actually wasn't in love. Like, it was a story around love that I had been taught, that I had created to get my emotional needs met. And so whenever they weren't met, I withdrew the love that I felt. And he did too. He was very good at the silent treatment. Like, this is my first husband. So he would not talk to me for 2 or 3 weeks. And as a really loving, kind human being, I could not understand that at all. And now I look back and I go, he had no resources to deal with his emotional world at all, which is why that was his strategy. He probably learned it as a kid. And I didn't understand either that I was in this dynamic of relationship that I could never fix. And I came to really know myself, actually. I made that my priority. And I looked at where I handed over my power to someone, my inner power. And I decided that, and sometimes it was hard, because sometimes I would have a pattern of behavior that I did as, from a childhood. And there was some that was very hard to break. And a lot of them have been dissolved, which is good because I've been aware of it, and new behaviours and new actions. Sometimes some of those strategies I used will come up again. Like a few weeks ago, I saw myself not telling the whole truth, which was something that I used to do as a child and did in my relationship with this partner. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because sometimes we have behaviours that are so intrinsic to the way that we operate that even though we can see that we're doing it and we don't want to do it, we really don't want to do it, we can't seem to stop ourselves. And I sat with that for 4 days, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I was watching myself in this behavior. And it was only when I sat at the middle of the night, I hopped up, and the feeling of the fear of not actually speaking my truth and doing what I knew I needed to do, I just decided that I want my freedom more than that, and I will not let this fear stop me from living a life of freedom. I will not let it. And so I did what I needed to do the next day. I fronted up and I just collected all my courage and I went and I did what I needed to do to right the situation. And so, Andrea, it has been a journey of me actually getting to know myself. But the more I've come into my heart and I've got to know myself, the more I trust myself. And so I know if a person, like recently I was telling Scott, I have a friend that's in addiction and I love him dearly. We have this incredible connection. But I trust myself well enough to go, you know what, like this is not healthy for me to be in a partnership with him, but I'm happy to support him at the moment. And I trust myself enough to know that even though it might be hard sometimes, if you feel a really deep connection with someone, I trust myself to know that I need to love myself enough to protect myself. And that's about trusting me. And then I can sort of trust other people. I can trust him because I know that if I put myself in the right place in comparison to him, then I'm going to be okay. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it's definitely all comes down to how well you trust yourself, because you make sure then that you're going to be okay in relationship to him. I don't take on his stuff, but I can see where he's operating from hurt and pain. I can be clear about where I am, and then I decide, how do I want to be in relationship with him? I don't know.
Sounds like what's really good to change your own inner resonance, Lisa. So you show, I've got an addiction to victimization. I love being the victim. So subconsciously I attract traumatized people for relationships. I don't know, maybe they give more energy or love to the victim. But in that, I got a bit over it in my last relationship. That's enough. Can't handle it anymore. And then I had to develop stronger boundaries around what I wouldn't tolerate in regards to controlling and PTSD and the behavior around that. I realized that maybe I was playing out what you said, subconsciously playing out relationship dynamics that weren't healthy, that were impregnated in my subconscious a long time ago. So I thought, okay, well, I've got strong boundaries now. I've got to show some self-respect. So then I changed what I call the inner resonance of my own being. And there's sometimes you got to use that little bit of your conscious mind, which is fuck all, compared to your subconscious mind, which is most of it, because you're running these patterns subconsciously. So you got to drip from your subconscious, from your conscious mind by doing the work, turning up, and then until your subconscious gets a bit more colored in a healthy way. So I think that's what you're saying. You developed a bit of self-respect and a bit of stronger boundaries. And the lady who asked the question, Andrea, maybe her name was, maybe she can develop stronger boundaries, and then that'll change her own inner resonance.
I think that's good, Omji, like what you're saying about develop different boundaries and stuff. One of the key things for me was I noticed that the relationship I was in with my first husband was a victim, persecutor, rescuer relationship. And what happened, we do all of this work on ourselves, and yet we never step out of that dynamic because we don't realize that there is another dynamic to live in, because we're not taught that. So whenever I feel like I'm a victim, or I feel like I want to rescue someone, or I feel angry, I go, oh, I'm in that old dynamic. That's not who I really am. I go, that's the old Lisa. So I first disidentify with that old dynamic. And I go, that's the old Lisa. The new Lisa doesn't approach relationships like that. So I always disidentify with the victim, persecutor, rescuer dynamic. We are never taught that there's another way to live. When I left my first husband, I didn't realize there's another way to be in relationship. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I just thought that's what everybody did, because it's always shown. We see it on our movies. So victim, persecutor, rescuer, if you can recognize the dynamic and know that you will never, ever, ever free yourself while you stay within that dynamic. You can work on yourself until the cows come home. But it's actually seeing the dynamic and stepping outside of that dynamic.
You can research it, Andrew. It's called the drama triangle.
Mm.
I'm going to throw
mine happened. Oh, sorry.
No, so I'm going to throw something into that because it's, for me, there's something inside this that when you love somebody who is an addict, you love them. So you're trying to do everything for them. The most important thing you can do is for yourself. And if you're looking for somewhere to start, your boundaries, what are your boundaries? I'd start with my values. I'd want to understand what my personal values are and really define those. I know that it helped me greatly through life when I became very defined in my values. Once you are very clear and defined on yours, other people's are harder to implement on you. So when people sit there and they're going through their pain and they're dealing with the things, you're so strong in your values that you can thank them. Because when someone's in pain, look, your physiology and everything about you, when you're in the presence of someone that you love, you're worried about them. They can feel your pain. You don't have to say anything. They know it. The number one thing you can give them is a smile and say, thank you for being here today. You're really important to me. I'm going to be here with you today, and sit with them. Let them talk. But you change your physiology, you'll change the way the circumstances get implied on you. So I'm just going to pop over to Serg for a sec because I'm going to ask Serg, your wife has been amazing and really supportive. And I want to know what things she does that just make everything worthwhile.
Look, I'm a very lucky man. I really am. So I'm 45. I've been with Rosemary since 1994. I've done a lot of things in my relationship, a lot of bad things in my relationship. I won't go into one of those things because I really don't want many people to know. But I'm very fortunate. Look, Rosemary being a teacher, she was a social worker prior to being a teacher. She's very understanding.
Can you explain how?
Sorry, Scotty?
Can you explain how she's understanding, what she does that you feel understood?
I can do no wrong. She might not be understanding, but she's supportive. She doesn't understand why I do certain things, but she supports me to. I guess she knows it's not the man that I am through the things that I do, but she accepts those for the sake of her family. I don't know of many women or many wives that would stick around with a partner that's, whether it be cheating or drug use, alcoholism, whatever, that would stick around with three little ones. But she's had my back through all the things that I've had. She's been supportive. I think being a teacher and being a social worker and dealing with people, I think she sees a side of me that knows this is just a phase. So she tries to ride that with me and just be understanding. She's always there. Whenever I'm having a pretty bad day, she sees it in my face and she gives me space firstly. Tries to give me time away from the kids, which they can be a bit full on at times. But she's amazing. I can't say much more than an amazing mother and wife. And
so can I just go into the place there? So she holds space for you to allow you to be you. Because
yes,
I'm gonna, and please tell me to stop if at any point.
Yep.
And we're going to share your story in the next week or so. There has been a lot of pain and trauma in your life, and the acceptance of Rose to just know that and to understand that you haven't quite got the tools with that and not take that on, that's kept you here.
It has. Look, it's I think sometimes we think we have. You think by the age of 45, I'd have life worked out. Let me tell you, some people sort of go, mate, it looks like you've got it together. We've never got it together. It's pretty hard, and
No.
it's I don't know how to say. I've had a really rough upbringing. Rose knows a lot of it. There's a lot of things that we haven't really spoken about. I try to keep her away from knowing too much because not because I guess it opens up a lot of pain for me.
Yeah.
It's all it's all family stuff that I don't really want to go into now. I'm 45. I haven't had my family in my life now for my daughter's so about 10 years. And I think I find that I deal with things better without talking about them. Yeah, sorry, it's got me a little bit out of my comfort zone here. Yeah, sorry.
Hey, mate, I just can't thank you enough.
You only just walked up, Serge.
Yeah.
You're right.
I love what you said, Serge, about how she knows that this is she looks at this as a phase and she knows who you really are. Because for me, the addiction is not who you really are. And who we really are is so totally not that addicted person. And yet we identify with the addicted person. And someone to love someone in addiction and go, hey, look, I see that behavior, but I know that's not who you really are. It continually reminds you of your fullest potential. And I think there's just so much support in that. It's beautiful.
No, look, it is. Look, I won't say I'm an addict. I'm a user. I try and not use the word addict because I find that
it's not a very pleasant word, is it?
No, it's not. It really isn't because I go, whether I use with mates or whatever, addict is a bit too much. She understands it's a fake because she can see the real me, and regardless whether I don't use anything around my children. My children's time has always been my children's time, and if I've ever used anything, it's been with mates after hours. But I have certain traits that my father had. A lot of anger inside of me. She's also seen a side of that. I'm not a violent person. But my good side is, I think personally, way more amazing than 70% good, 30% bad, or 80-20. But because she can see the real me and she can see how hard I try, I guess, to not be like my father. I just find that I'm lucky that she's still around, I guess, because she's had many chances to walk, and she hasn't, which sort of makes me, I'm so blessed, I guess. But yeah,
That's beautiful.
Sorry,
that she can hold your space. Is she an emotional person too, Serge? Do you hold her space sometimes?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, she's been through a lot in her life. But she went through a lot of her pain when we met. Her father had a stroke at the age of 50 on the night we met. So she had 17, 18 years that she dealt with that while her father was in a nursing home. And she's cried all her tears. But what sort of hurts the most was that when I turned to addiction, which is when we lost our home, etc., was the day we buried her father. Yeah, I handed the keys over to my house that day.
What a shit day.
Very, because this was the greatest man on earth. So there's someone many people would aspire to be. But look, it is what it is. You know, you can't, I keep dwelling on the past, but the past, I guess, from Scotty's words, it's made me who I am. And I'm
I had a
thankful
lot
for
of
that, I guess.
unresolved grief too, bro, from the past. I think everyone carries a lot of pain somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
they do, but I question myself all the time, you know. 3 siblings, why I was treated differently to everyone else, etc., etc. And you sort of think, you know, what have I done in life to deserve that? But now I think about it, I guess, you know, so I lost family. That's okay. My family's now my wife and my 3 kids. It is what it is.
I found for me personally, I wasn't the only time I was able to actually give up a substance was when I resolved the inner war that I had inside myself. And that didn't have to do with anyone else. This had to do with like coming to peace with like whatever it was.
I guess, yeah, look, I guess that's something that I have to deal with, I guess. And I think I've been working at it, I guess. It's going to take time. I might never get to that point. But luckily, I'm not an addict. I'm a user. But I can easily get away from that. Look, I think I just have to get over the fact of my past. I don't think there's really a way to resolve my past. It's more, I think I find a matter of acceptance.
Yeah, on acceptance, I found that when I accepted the company that I keep, and I realised that I tried to hang around some functional people for a while, and they just irritated me. So I found that the people that I could really relate to were the addicts. And I don't care if I use the word or judgment, it's all the same, just words that we communicate with as humans. It all depends on whether they provide us with personal validation or whether we get invalidated by the term that we use. It doesn't really matter. But I've got addicts throughout the world that have reached out to me who have had spiritual awakenings. And they're sensitive people with deep insight into their own being. And I wouldn't trade that company for the world, mate. You know, they're the ones that touch my heart the most, the ones that are struggling along trying to keep it some sort of composure to see out their life, you know. So you can be as hard on yourself as you want, use whatever terms you want to fight against, but you're you, and if you've got a big beating heart, then that's the best thing you can do. And even if that's only showing what you say 70% of the time, well, that's going to have to do, Chief.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. You're totally right. Look, I think I've got a lot of work to do. I'm glad I've got Scott in my corner. Like I said, I worked out who my friends were. In saying that, you know, I didn't call my friends because they didn't have my back. Because you can't blame everyone, or you can't judge someone because they didn't ask you whether you're okay when you're doing it tough, etc. But I found that Scott understood, and you know, I'm dealing with it on a daily basis. It's getting better. But like I said, sort of, yeah, it's going to take time, and whether we get there or not, I guess only time will tell.
Just be wise who you spend time around, man. You know, you need a support. You need a support network. You can be as harsh on yourself as you want, or you can like be as accepting as you want. But everyone craves validation, and that's why Scott gets on well with you, because he's been along that road, and his truth's actually reflected in you.
Yeah,
and then he can care about you as well with his big heart that's sort of overcome himself and his own inner war. So he can support you, man. So you're going all right. Just it's a long game, bro.
a day at a time. A day at a time. I can assure you, I haven't smiled in a long time, and Scott actually got me in front of a mirror. If you remember this, Scotty, it made me smile. And you know, how does that feel? And to this day, I still do it every morning, mate. Yeah. Anyway, look, we get there. Slowly, slowly.
There's Serge. One of the things that I found really beneficial, because I know when you have a lot of pain, and he's dropped out now. When you have a lot of pain and it's really hard to feel stuff, it's thinking that maybe those feelings are our friends rather than something that we have to overcome and get rid of. And that was the biggest thing for me, is like, wow, these feelings that are coming up actually are showing me exactly what I have to do. Like, if I look at them and I take them as the sign or the way that I need to move forward and use them. Like, if I'm sad, okay, the sadness is showing me I need to do something to make myself feel happy, and actually making my feelings my friends. Like, that was the one thing that really reduced the intensity of feeling for me.
I'm with you.
To hear that.
No, my apologies. Actually, my phone just died, and I lost it. I had to log in again. So I actually missed that question. So I do apologise.
I was just saying that with our feelings, one of the things that really helped me was looking at them as my friends, because I used to really struggle with them. I used to go, I wish I didn't feel this. I want to get rid of it. I don't want to have this in my life. But as soon as I went, you know what, like every single time I have a feeling now, I go, oh, what's that telling me I need to do? What is that? That's actually showing me something. And sometimes it might be something so random that it's like, I just go, oh, I wouldn't have even picked that had it not been for this feeling. So it's like, as soon as I look at my feelings as an opportunity and my friends and trying to help me with something, all of a sudden the intensity, the intensity that you feel because they're so powerful, that intensity sort of subdues a little bit. And I found that so helpful. That was like one of the biggest things for me.
That's what helped me with my inner war. Just acceptance rather than fighting against myself, saying I should be like this or I should be like that or I do this and do that. Sometimes it's okay if I feel like a failure, and that's all right. The feeling's not there to go to war with. It's just to go. There.
It's all good. It's all this feeling experience, and it's like, you can actually feel okay with some of the really crappy feelings too, which surprises me.
Spot on, but
look, owning your feelings and emotions and understanding those is probably the most pivotal part to, and it's never like a recovery, but it's acceptance of yourself. And I think that's some of the biggest hurdles we all have in life. I have it. I'm sure Omji has it. I'm sure Lisa has it. We're all still on our journey to find out who we are. The most important thing we can do is support each other. And I hope everybody's seeing that tonight, because we've got a guy who's hurting, who's taken the brave step of just joining us tonight and owning a small part of his story, which we'll hear the rest of later. But tonight, I hope you've seen how we actually do.
It's pretty rare I go a whole day without feeling not enough several times.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I go like a couple of hours feeling enough, then that's like an anomaly.
I agree.
We're going to sell those. Oh, Serge, something for you, mate. I want you to say. Great discussion, many angles. Love it. The third
thank you.
Star tonight, mate. You're helping others by owning your story.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope so. I hope that through my crap life, someone gains something out of it, I guess.
Not a crap life, Serge. It's not. Yeah. It's a beautiful life.
Sometimes the best thing is to celebrate your victories too, Serge.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was addicted to victimization, man. Yeah. If I sit there and instead of feeling like 2 thoughts out of 10 are victimization thoughts, and maybe one is, I get to the end of the day and go, mate, that's progress. I only had one thought today, or 1 thought out of 10 that was victimized, rather than 20%. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, spot on. Spot
make sure you give yourself a high five from now on, from time to time, and go, bro, that was
on.
progress.
Yeah,
Instead
no,
of
no, look,
you know, go.
look, I think every time I speak out, it sort of helps. I guess.
Yeah.
Just something new for me, I guess, and we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm smiling. I'm happy. I'm actually glad I spoke out, or sort of talked about some of my issues. In time, I think Scott and I will sit down and go a bit more into my life, which is a little bit daunting. But yeah, I'm grateful for tonight. Grateful for you guys
The
listening.
other thing that helps a lot, Serge, is like just remember to breathe.
Yeah.
I think we forget that sometimes, don't we? We do.
And we're all talking about feelings and coming into the moment and things like that. Yeah, we go in head trips and things. So we just sit there and go, "How am I breathing?" And then maybe your breath's a magical thing. It's a little bit cunning, bro, because it's like one of those things. It's like both. It's like involuntary at the same time that it's voluntary.
Yep.
So it's one of the only things that we have that's like that. So you can actually influence your whole physiology through your breath and your state of mind. It's a sneaky bastard.
It is, isn't it?
Thanks for getting on. Thanks for getting on and showing us rawness and humanness. I love humanness, bro. I can tell Lisa's aroused too. This is her juice. And I'm aroused because she's got the Sanskrit alphabet in the background, and that's another one of my addictions.
That's gold. That's fantastic. I just noticed that.
I'm going to, just because of time, and we've gone over the hour again, which it's so easy to do, because something that's really important is there is no Band-Aid approach to any part of this conversation. It takes time. Tonight, we've heard a small part of Serge's story, and we've loved it. Everyone's loved it because it's you. We're accepting you because you're beautiful as you are.
Thank you, Scott.
This is how we work with people that have addiction, have a numbing tool, don't have the tools to deal with their current situation. That's already in my eyes. So I'm going to ask everybody tonight to give out, if you could give everybody one bit of advice on how to love someone that's hurting. That's all they are. They're just hurting. They don't know how to deal with their current situation. What would that be? Omji, I'm going to put you on the spot.
I reckon a person is best to focus on their own inner foursome. Like, let's say you got masculine and feminine energy, or you can say left and right side of brain, doesn't matter what it is. There's a masculine part of you that's, when it's healthy, you can hold space and not be involved. Or there's an unhealthy masculine energy that can be like abusive, maybe physically intimidating or something. So if it's in the healthy, it can hold space. And then the feminine can be a bit full on if it's venomous and fills up the space in an unhealthy way. But it can also be beautiful if it's creative and in the moment and flowing. So if people can be aware of their healthy masculine and feminine expressions, then they can turn up in one of those, whether it's emotional resonance for the addict or holding space, then that can be a beautiful thing.
That is beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Lisa?
I actually want to sort of echo Omji's wisdom there, because I think it all comes back to ourself. So if I'm feeling triggered, and if I'm feeling angry, and if I can't just see that person for what they are and just sit in the love and just be with them and accept them, then I would go and deal with what I have going on inside of me. I would take myself out of that picture if I could and release the emotional charge so it doesn't come out at them. so that I can sit in the present moment. So love yourself enough to listen to how you feel. Because if you stay there and you're feeling all this stuff, then you're going to be abandoning yourself and you're going to get resentful, and the person in front of you is going to cop it. And that doesn't really add to anything. So if you can listen to how you feel, pay attention to that. And when you're there, just really be there for them. We're all human. We've all got stuff.
What
There's that
Lisa said on the video is
We've all got stuff.
paramount too, Scott. It's not their addiction's not about you.
No, 100%. And it's 100%. And it's so I'm actually going to let Serg have the last word tonight because he's been important. But I'm going to throw over my little bit for this one because firstly, if you're choosing to love someone with addiction, thank you. Because you're seeing beyond that addiction and they're worth it. Secondly, if you don't have the tools to deal with it today, thank them for showing you that and then leave it. Come back to it tomorrow because you're worth it and so are they. If you keep breeding the pain, it keeps existing. Serg, Lisa, Omji, thank you so much for tonight. But Serg, I want you to leave us tonight with something you suggest for people to love someone with addiction.
Look, I think first and foremost, you need to accept yourself first. Now, I found that until I actually accepted the way that I was, that I couldn't love anyone. And that I didn't feel that I also deserved that love from a person because I was hiding behind a mask. Now, I feel self-acceptance is the most important. And I think just being true to yourself is the only way you're going to come across to someone. There's no use hiding behind that mask because people are going to see through it. And you're not only lying to yourself, but you're lying to your next partner. So I think for me, I had to accept who I was, the sort of person I was, the upbringing that I had, etc. And in that, I learned that I could be loved and that I could love in return. We're not perfect. I'm just not used to so many questions. But yeah, I just think self-acceptance is the most important. Don't lie to yourself because you're only lying to yourself. You're lying to the person you're with. It's quite simple.
Yeah.
Sorry, it probably doesn't make much
No,
sense.
mate,
But yeah, it's,
no, it's perfect. I just, on that tonight, I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank everybody for popping up their questions. But if you have more, this conversation is not finished. This conversation will be continuing. Lisa and I have made a commitment to get this conversation as far as we can because everybody's worth it. Thank you, Omji. Thank you, Serg. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure meeting you.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
you. Stanford. Panel, if you can hang around for a sec, we'll see you all soon. Thanks, guys. See you next Thursday.
See you, guys.